Dāmas un kungi, priecājos jūs visus satikt drošajā teltī. Jums ir paveicies nokļūt uz ļoti jaudīgu diskusiju, jo netik bieži mums ir vienā telpā, kur ir pieejami arī civilajiem, tik ļoti nopietni cilvēki ar tik ļoti augstām dienesta pakāpēm. Un mēs ļoti ar interesi gaidīsim, ko tad mūsu kolēģi atbildēs uz mūsu šīs dienas diskusijas jautājumu, vai patiesībā virsrakstu, kas skan Sabiedrotie Latvijā, mūsu kopējā gatavība sargāt Eiropu. Bet vispirms dažas tehniskas lietas. Saruna notiks angļu valodā. Un, ja jums ir nepieciešams tulkojums no angļu valodas uz latviešu valodu, tad tur stūrī ir austiņas un droši lietojiet austiņas. Un, lai jūs nemulsina, arī sarunas beigās jums būs iespēja uzdot jautājumu. Jūs droši jautājumus varēsiet uzdot arī latviešu valodā. Mēs kaut kā jau šeit tiksim galā. Un tagad es pārēju uz angļu valodu. Yes, hello once more. I'm very pleased to have such a distinguished panel on this topic. And as we laughed outside the tent, this is a pretty straightforward topic, and we can have an answer to the allies in Latvia, our common readiness to defend Europe in just one word, and I hope it's a yes. So, but let's start by introducing our distinguished panel. To my left, I have Major General Jete Albinusa, NATO Multinational Division North Commander. Then we have a Colonel Džims Smits, a Commander of Task Force Latvia, un mūsu pašu Nacionālo bruņoto spēku pārstāvis pulkvedis Guntars Strazdītis, and representative of National Armed Forces Latvia, Colonel Guntars Strazdītis. So let us start with a quick questionnaire for the audience. Judging by the uniforms, I know who you represent, but others who are not in uniforms, those who are civilians in your professional life, please raise hands. Okay. So we have a 50-50 audience. I thought we are all colleagues, but we have a 50-50 audience. So maybe Commander Albinus, what is your take, and what would be your answer on our today's headline, which is our common readiness to defend Europe?
My answer would be yes, we are ready. Are we ready to the extent we would like to be? I will say no, but we are on our way. I think we have to realize that most European countries have been fighting in international missions for 3 decades. And now, or at least after, you can say maybe the beginning of 14, but especially after Russia attacked Ukraine in 22, we have had to switch to national defense. And unfortunately, it takes time to build up forces, but I think definitely we are on our way.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, first, thank you very much for having me here today. Today actually marks 1 year since I first set foot in Latvia, and I can tell you I'm really encouraged by all the growth and increased readiness that I've seen over the last year, whether it's in infrastructure, in communications, command and control, or the actual physical presence of soldiers on the ground. I represent Canada here in Latvia. I am the national command element, but I also have a responsibility to provide the support and sustainment to Canadian forces that are actually supporting NATO. And I have a really weird perspective on everything. Canada is separated from here by over 7,000 kilometers, and we see this investment in Latvia as very significant because the security of Latvia is the security of NATO, which ultimately is the security of Canada. And we are very proud of our contribution, and I think that the upswing of readiness that I'm seeing in this country is both rewarding, but also very encouraging to the troops that are here. Thank you.
Thank you. As we have in our audience civilians, maybe you can briefly name some facts about the task force Latvia? How many Canadians? What type of things are you doing within the things you can say, of course?
Yeah, certainly. And like, I am fully cognizant that I'm sitting beside two hockey giants. Canada used to be very proud of our hockey heritage, and in the last 6 months, we have been embarrassed on the ice by both Denmark and Latvia. And like, that's not a slight, but it's definitely talks to the camaraderie and the shared experience that we go through over here. And I'll tell you, it's really reassuring having, whether it's 14 or 18 NATO allies working beside us, because that trust, cooperation, and competitive spirit is fierce within Latvia. So the question was, what do I do over here as Task Force Latvia? And again, Canada, in a bilateral relationship with Latvia, is committed on many fronts. Yes, we have a brigade that's contributed to the multinational division, and that is ensuring their success is one of my responsibilities. However, we are also trying to expand NATO infrastructure here in the country. We are trying to establish and bolster communication networks, and we are also partnering with Latvian on a cyber defense initiative. So there are many other capabilities that we also support here in theater, but really it's the partnership of Canadians, Latvians, and the multinational community that I represent. Thank you.
Thank you. And Colonel Strazdītis?
Es tad atbildēšu latviski.
Okay.
Protams, mēs kā bruņotie spēki esam gatavi aizstāvēt Latviju no 1. centimetra, un tas arī iekļauj plašāku kontekstu gan NATO, gan Eiropas Savienību. Bet, ja mēs runājam plašāk, tad, protams, mēs Latvijā strādājam uz visaptverošu valsts aizsardzību, kas nav tikai bruņotie spēki, bet tā ir visa sabiedrība, kas rūpējās par mūsu valsts drošību. Tāpēc, plašāk sakot, protams, bruņotie spēki ir daļa no aizsardzības, bet sabiedrība arī jābūt gatavai stāvēt un aizstāvēt lietas, kā tas ir. Turklāt mēs to katru gadu arī trenējam mūsu ikgadējās mācībās. Papildus, ko es gribēju pateikt, nav jau tā, ka NATO kolēģi ir šeit un mums nav jādara savu mājas darbu. Mums ir jāizdara savu mājas darbu, un to mēs darām. Un viens no tiem mājas darbiem ir Baltijas aizsardzības līnija, ko jūs noteikti plaši esat dzirdējuši gan presē, gan visur citur. Un šeit ir arī tā sadaļa, ka ne mēs bruņotie spēki varam visu izdarīt. Arī politiķiem jānāk pretī, jāsakārto normatīvi akti, tā lai mēs varētu izdarīt tas, kas mums jāizdara. Un līdz ar to kaut kādā brīdī ne tikai bruņotie spēki tad ir atbildīgi par šo, bet arī plašāka sabiedrības daļa. Tas tad lielos vilcienos ir, plāni mums ir uz vietas, mums ir sabiedrotie, kas mums atbalsta sargāt Latviju. Un arī sabiedrība, tas, ko mēs redzam, ir gatavi iesaistīties un atbalstīt mūsu kopējā šī uzdevuma.
Just briefly, Colonel mentioned that our readiness is one of the pillars of our readiness is comprehensive defense. We will deep dive into that later on in this discussion. But Commander Albinus, maybe you can describe the multinational division North. What is it based?
Yeah, the division today consists, of course, of a headquarter. The headquarter is stationed in Aizsardzības, but we also have a part of the headquarter in Slagelse in Denmark. Besides the headquarter, we have brigades below. A brigade can be a unit size between 3,000 and up to 6,000. We have 2 brigades in place as we speak under my command. It's the Latvian Mechanized Infantry Brigade, and it's a multinational brigade where Canada is a framework nation. Our task basically here is to deter and, if necessary, to defend. And that's what we are doing. And as we are speaking right now, I will also say that, NATO and Latvia, we are one. Because I cannot fulfill my task without having the Latvian troops, and it goes both for the Mechanized Infantry Brigade, but also for the National Guards. So we are working together very closely. And again, if I have to be able to deter together with the Latvian forces, I also have to be able to defend, and I have to show that I'm willing capable and ready to defend. So I think that was in very short time. What we do in the meantime, of course, is that we train. We try to come out and be visible in Latvia. And there are 19 different countries that contribute with personnel or units. More specific, there are 11 that contribute with troops. So we are very multinational. And the good thing about that is that you can say, should anybody dare to attack Latvia, well, then they will attack half of NATO, right?
Yes, you mentioned the key word deterrence. The best defense is deterrence. And maybe you can explain a bit how do you see deterrence, the concept of deterrence, what it means?
Yeah, I think when we talk about deterrence, we have to look at the opponent. And this is, of course, my personal opinion. But basically, I don't think we can deter Russia by words or by saying what we intend to do. I really think we have to show the Russians that we are capable and willing to defend. So what kind of activities does that lead to? Basically, you can say we exercise the plan. We don't hide that we exercise the plan. And we don't hide our capabilities. I think that's probably the shortest version. Of course, many of you might also have heard about communications or strategic communications. And that, of course, also is necessary. But it has to be linked up with forces. Else, personally, I do not think it has any effect.
Do you have anything to add on deterrence?
Listen, I'm an engineer, so I break everything down to math, whether it makes sense or not. And so readiness as an equation is equal to, so I guess deterrence is equal to the readiness to defend and defeat, right? And so we need to be able to demonstrate our resolve, whether it's through operations, exercises, training, or the physical force that we have on the ground. And that readiness to actually defend and defeat any Russian aggression is the demonstration or the manifestation of our readiness. And it is through readiness and that ability to deter that we are going to avoid a miscalculation by someone thinking that they might be able to take advantage of an opportunity. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
And but coming back to your first remark that we haven't reached the extent we want to be, maybe you can give us a hint. Where are we closer to? If we give a number from 1 to 10, closer to 10, or where are we standing?
Maybe 6 or 7, because of course we are still lacking some capabilities. In many countries in Europe, I can primarily speak from my own, there are high willingness to invest in the defense. The challenge is that the industry cannot follow up with the requirements. So I think in a very few years we will be in a much different place. Until we are there, we will of course be ready to fight with whatever we have in our hands. And I'm also convinced, because NATO, you know, it's a lot of countries and we cover a lot of geography. So should something occur here on the eastern border, I'm also sure that NATO will prioritize the resources in this direction. And then of course the things would look different. So if you then would ask me, how do we then prepare ourselves for that? I think it comes back to that even though we don't have all the nice equipment we would like to have, could be long-range artillery or missiles, we can still start asking for having the necessary people, get them trained, and have the procedures in place. So should we get all the equipment we are dreaming of, then we are of course also ready to utilize it.
Something to add?
I think, you know, we can probably use an analogy of sports. And so as the season goes on, a team might have a certain level of defense or a certain offensive strategy. And as the season will progress, those strategies will evolve to meet the needs and demands of the game. And I'm not saying that what's happening here is a game, but I am saying that we need to constantly be improving ourselves to be at the place of relative advantage when something goes wrong, so that we can always be ready to actually prevail.
Colonel?
tad ko es gribu pateikt, ka Krievija saprot tikai spēku. Ja mēs būsim gatavi aizstāvēt savu valsti, būsim sazīmējuši plānus, būsim morāli nobrieduši un parādīsim, ka mēs esam spēcīgi ar vēlmi aizstāvēties, tad arī Krievija teiksim, ņems to vērā, un tas būs tas galvenais atturēšanas mehānisms. Ja runājam par spējām un kas ir jāattīsta, nu, nekad nebūsim gatavi. Mēs redzam, Ukrainā karš mainās ik pa nedēļai. Ir jāaug līdz tehnoloģijām, ir jāaug līdz jaunajām spējām, jādomā inīt, iekļaujot mūsu bruņotajos spēkos jaunās spējas, jaunās tehnoloģijas. Līdz ar to pateikt, ka spējas ir pilnībā attīstītas, mēs nevaram nekad. Vienmēr būs kaut kas jāuzlabo, jāpilnveido, lai mēs saglabātu šo spēju sacensties ar mūsu pretinieku. Tāpēc mums ir jāaug katru brīdi, katru dienu, jāmācās jaunas lietas, jāievieš jaunās tehnoloģijas. Un tas ir pastāvīgs darbs. Tur nevar pateikt, ka bruņotie spēki kaut kad ir gatavi pilnībā aizsardzībai. Tāpēc mums ir nepārtraukti jātrenējās, jādara lietas un jāgatavojas.
Colonel just mentioned that the warfare in Ukraine shows us how quickly the technologies how quickly the technologies impact the warfare. And just a quick question: the NATO is a big organism, a lot of structures, a lot of people, a lot of tradition. Are we as a NATO capable and are we fast to adapt to new changes?
It's probably a big mouthful to answer on behalf of the whole NATO, because it's a lot of countries and they have very different perspectives. I think if we zoom into this area, and we still have more or less half of NATO here in Latvia, I think because we are here on a daily life, we see the necessity to try to learn from what is happening in Ukraine. And actually we do that both via all the national chains, where we get different kind of information, and also Latvia, the Mechanized Infantry Brigade, has been very helpful and very good. They have been visiting units in Ukraine, and we take these lessons learned back. Coming back to your question, are we good and fast enough to adapt? To a certain extent, I think we are, at least in our mindset. But it comes back to the challenge that one of the things I think we have to be better at is have a much closer daily work with the different kind of producers, industry. Because as you're saying, the development goes very fast. And if we have to utilize that technology, we cannot, spend 5 years at procuring one new thing. We have to be much more, helpful to each other. And let me just add one point to what was mentioned by my Latvian colleague. When we talk about the new technology, I also have a point for all of you. Please, when we talk about that, don't think that we are only talking about drones, right? Drones is just one thing. We are talking about unmanned systems, and we are talking about autonomous systems. And that's, I think, an area where we will see a huge development in the future. And I think coming back to NATO, I think it's an advance for us, because what some of these systems can do, that they can, in certain situations, replace soldiers, and then we can use soldiers for the kind of task where we definitely need soldiers. So I think we will see a lot of that in the future. And my biggest concern is if we are capable of getting closely linked to the producers, so we can help each other out on this one.
I agree.
Engineer has a lot of stuff to say on technology.
I agree. That's not my answer. So I was very privileged to command the Land Warfare Center in Canada before coming here, and so I was very focused on 2035 and beyond. So adapting and modernizing Canadian capabilities to win the next war, and I think with two major land wars going on simultaneously right now, all of our countries are keenly watching what are the emerging trends that are coming out of both in Israel as well as in Ukraine, because those emerging trends are likely to be where we gravitate going forward. Right? There's currently an advantage to the defense. the 3-to-1 ratio that we used to speak of having to have on the offense is not sufficient to gain ground. And so as we watch what those force multipliers are on the ground, whether they're drones, but I believe you're absolutely right, ma'am. The key here is to watch the innovation of our talent, and that is all the soldiers, sailors, and airmen and women that we have within the forces. Their baseline understanding and knowledge is going up. My children are 12 years old and 10 years old, and they have never used a keyboard, right? And so we need to adapt to the innovation. They've been tablet-based, but if I go to any of our offices, you will see keyboards everywhere. And so does that mean that the Canadian Armed Forces and NATO are going to be responsible for teaching the next generation how to use keyboards? Or are we going to adapt and innovate and use voice technologies and other new cognitive capacities to innovate rapidly? So there's a lot of things that are rapidly developing right now. I've talked about the talent, but processes as well. We cannot be stuck in the bureaucracy of old, and we leverage, whether it's artificial intelligence or rapidly machine learning to get to where we want to be on the battle space. And then finally, it's technology. And so we cannot be scared of technology. We have senior leaders in all of our forces who grew up pre-dial-up modem, right? And so they are not digital natives, and we need to admit to our weaknesses and embrace the rapid pace of technological change. And through doing those three, so technology, processes, and talent, I think we will be ready to meet the next challenge.
Protams, pilnībā piekrītu maniem kolēģiem, bet sabiedrībā izveidojusies tā sapratne, ka ar droniem var atrisināt visu. Tā nav. Mēs vēl joprojām paliekam arī atkarīgi no tradicionālām militārām spējām, inženieri, kaujas inženieri, artilērija. Ja mēs skatāmies uz droniem, šīs tehnoloģijas ļoti atkarīgas, un ja tieši mēs runājam par gaisa domēnu, ļoti atkarīgas no laikapstākļiem. Kara darbība vienmēr tāda nav, tāpēc artilērijai vienmēr būs nozīmes un arī citām tradicionālām spējām. Skaidrs, ka mums jāiet līdzi tehnoloģija attīstībai, jāieviec viss jaunais, bet neaizmirstam arī par tradicionālām spējām. Ir jāspēj izbalansēt starp jaunajām tehnoloģijām un tradicionālām. Tas ir.
Thank you. This was a very valuable comment about the balance or the impact of the drones and emerging technologies and sort of traditional mechanized army. And I have a question. What does it mean for a soldier, all these new technologies, and most of the new soldiers are digital natives, as you say. What does it mean for them, all this new emerging technologies? Is it a dystopian kind of war, or what are we talking about?
If I should start, I think we still have to look at the soldier with maybe a broader perspective, right? Because we still need the classic infantry fighting soldier, skilled physically, but we also need the smart guy who have been sitting, most of his youth behind a computer, because he will be the one controlling the drones, right? So basically you can say, and normally I'm also saying that when we talk about recruitment of soldiers, we need soldiers with all different kinds of skill sets because we have tasks for all of them. So I think more it's in our own mind that we need to look, at every human being, no matter if you are male, female, tall or small, or very cognitive smart. We can use all, right, because we do have a task for all, exactly based on what was mentioned before by my colleagues. And maybe we should all be better to communicate that, because there's a lot of people who wants to make a difference, who wants to do something. And especially, like, I assume most of the young people here are feeling that, should something occur here, we would like to defend our own country. I know even in Denmark, even though we are a little bit, further away, we see a lot of young people who wants to sign up due to the threat, due to all of the things that is going on in the world right now. And I think we have to be better to tell, hey, we can use all of you. You can all make a difference if you want to.
Thank you. That was motivational. Commander Smith.
So I'm going to go a little bit a different way with my comments. And so I think we can, if we look back truly to the history of some wars, we've realized that like the victor has ultimately demonstrated that they have mass magazine depth and interior lines of communication. And through dominating those aspects of war, whether it's communication can be manifested in many ways. Magazine depth is just how many bullets you can fire, and mass is the sheer amount of troops on the ground. For anybody who's not tracking what I'm just saying there, but I think what you're trying to deliver is an effect on the adversary, and so my comment would really be, yes, we need to balance traditional ways of fighting wars, but I think there's new and innovative ways to deliver those effects. The old days of having 18 guns on a gun line to deliver a regiment's fire might be able to be replicated in a different way with 3 soldiers behind enemy lines calling in a drone strike. And so when talent is limited in that we don't have the numbers that we used to through conscription, we need to have different and innovative and leverage technology to actually deliver the same effect in a less or a more cost-efficient way. And that's my comment, and I'm sorry for kind of going offline a little bit there.
Colonel, add something?
Skaidrs, ka ir jāievieš šīs jaunās tehnoloģijas, un katrs cilvēks, it sevišķi mazām valstīm, kā mēs esam, ir vērtība un ir jāsaprot, kā saglabāt viņu un aizsargāt. Līdz ar to tehnoloģijām ir un būs liela nozīme. Un to es arī gribu pateikt, ka ieviešot valsts aizsardzības dienestu, mēs arī uz to skatāmies. Tas nav, lai ražotu tā kā Krievija lielgabalgaļu, tas ir, lai mācītu, domāt, saprast, un tad izmantot šīs jaunās tehnoloģijas, nākt ar inovācijām un domāt, kādā veidā mēs varam saglabāt savus cilvēkus. Līdz ar to, jā, protams, mēs arī nacionāli par to domājam un ir mums iemesls par to domāt, skatoties uz mūsu gan demografisko situāciju, gan izmēru kopumā.
Thank you for your comment. Now let's speak about broader society, not just only focusing on the military personnel. We are here to defend the people, basically, the territory and the people. And in order to make that very effective, people should all, in some ways, participate in a coherent defense system. So maybe you can tell us a little bit how it is organized in Denmark. What lessons could Latvia learn from your experience back at home?
I wish I could come up with 5 quick answers for that one, because I think actually it's the opposite way around. So now I will try to offend my own country a little bit. But we are very naive as Danes, right? No, we don't think it happens, right? We were like that during the beginning of the Second World War, and still, if I come back to Denmark, there are this kind of effect where, you know, if I talk to someone, they say, nah, it's not going to happen, right? So I will basically say Danes are quite naive. So in Denmark, we have struggled to persuade our people to actually follow what is recommended. For example, that you have to be able to take care of your family when it comes to power, food, water for at least 3 days. But it's only 33% of the Danish population that actually have done so. And many also, when we talk about, you know, the threat, they kind of think, but it's unrealistic that, you know, Russian will suddenly appear in Denmark. But what they seem to forget is the movement we have seen and the actions we've seen in the cyber domain. Because I can assure you, if we lose power in Denmark for 3 days, everybody will be in panic, right? So it's also something about to communicate that we are talking a much more complex security situation. And I also think we have to prepare the population for all the threats that are in when it comes to cyber activities. So unfortunately, I cannot say you should do like the Danes. I actually think we should do more like you do.
Okay, thank you. And what about Canada?
Yeah, I agree. I've been living here for a year, and I can say that although Latvia might be a small country, it is a very strong and proud country. And Canada could learn a lot from the the many aspects of what Latvia as a whole of government team does in order to protect its sovereignty and security. The fall exercise that happens in September is amazing. The conscription is amazing. The national pride is amazing. Mobilization of this country over the last few years is amazing. And I think Canada could and should leverage our position here to learn from the excellent example that is being set on the ground every day. I think many of the challenges that normally come with transitioning from peace to war have been spoken about in a way that is preparing a country for any eventuality, whether positive or negative. And it's better to take care of that communication and policies far in advance of any bullets flying in order to be prepared. And again, like the way that Latvia has tackled this and had those uncomfortable conversations is really setting the pathway for many NATO countries, as you can see with some of the discussions that are happening. And I think it's very interesting, and it's worth recognizing that Latvia has been recognized with a Security Council seat just recently on the UN Security Council. And so again, I applaud that recent acknowledgement of how dedicated Latvia is to protecting their sovereignty and security.
And without any exaggeration, we can say that we have our reasons because the very first centimeter of NATO begins here on our country. Colonel, a lot of compliments from your colleagues towards Latvian society and national armed forces, but maybe you have some comment on that.
Protams, paldies par komplimentiem, bet tas nenozīmē, ka darbs ir izdarīts. Darbs ir jāturpina darīt. Mums ir ļoti daudz sabiedroto, gan citas valsts iestādes, gan arī civilie mūsu sadarbības partneri, ko mēs katru gadu trenējamies un darbojamies kopā. Bet mēs vēl nevaram pateikt, ka mēs esam pilnīgi izveidojuši sistēmu, lai līdz galam saprastu, kā katru un ikvienu, kā komandieris kundze teica, izmantotu pēc labākās iespējas visaptvarošas valsts aizsardzībā. Tāpēc mums vēl darbs darāms, daudz ir izdarīts, bet, protams, vēl ejam uz priekšu, strādājam, meklējam integrācijas risinājumus un sakaru kanālus, kādā veidā mēs labāk varētu komunicēt, darboties gan krīzes, gan kara gadījumā, potenciāli kara gadījumā. Tāpēc arī mēs regulāri organizējam mobilizācijas mācības, testējam, kā šīs sistēmas strādā. Kopumā ir darbs, kas ir izdarīts, bet ir arī mācības, kas vēl jāiemācās, teiksim tā. Un mūsu mācības namējs nav viena nedēļa vai 2 nedēļas rudenī. Mūsu mācības namējs ir ilgstošs process, ciklisks process, kurā mēs izējam cauri vienreiz visām procedūrām, saprotam, kas mums vēl jāiemācās, saprotam, kas jāuzlabo un ejam uz priekšu, nākošais solis, un tā gadu pa gadam. Un katru gadu mums ir vairāk šīs institūcijas, kas pievienojās namēji šīm mācībām, mācību ciklam, un mēs augam savā zināšanās, bet nav jau tā, ka mēs paši to visu esam izdomājuši, mēs arī esam mācījušies no citām valstīm, Somijas, Igaunijas, kas arī šī pašā virzienā skatās un ieviešam tos labākās prakses pie mums. Manuprāt, mums sanāk labi, vajag vēl labāk.
Mēs esam uz tā 6 vai 7?
Tā varētu teikt, jā.
Just a quick survey. Colonel mentioned exercise NAMEs. Please raise your hands who are participating or have been participated in NAMEs. Well, we have, as you see, we have a lot of opportunity, let's say. Well, I don't want to be a devil's advocate, but preparing for this talk, I opened a page of Ministry of Defense on the current situation. You said that Danes are naive and only 33% are ready for these 72 hours. Maybe you can guess how many Latvians, according to MOD, are ready or have done preparations for these 3 days.
Well, it will be hard because normally I would say that people living on the countryside, they always have food for more than 3 days, right? So I think it also depends. I actually think it's the people living in the cities that, you know, are used to having all the shops open. And what you can hear in my reply is that I would like to avoid to guess how many Latvians
yes.
that are
You're
actually
a
prepared.
very good politician.
Right?
You're a good politician, but like 8%. So we have a lot to do, and therefore my question: what are the closest or the nearest things we can do today, tomorrow to raise this percentage of readiness of people?
Mums ir jāstāsta sabiedrībai un jāizglīto viņu pa lielam. Un tas nav tikai bruņotie spēki, tas ir visiem kopumā jāstāsta, kādā veidā sagatavoties. Kā jau es teicu, liela daļa no atturēšanas ir būt gataviem, būt saprast, kas tev ir jādara, kas tev ir nu, teiksim tā, jāsagatavo savai ģimenei un plašāk tad savam ģimenes lokam, tuvākiem radiniekiem izstāstīt, kādā veidā mēs rīkosimies, izdomāt to cauri. Un tas arī veido to gatavības kultūru. Tas tad nav īstermiņā atrisināms jautājums, tas ir ilgtermiņā izglītības jautājums sabiedrībai stāstīt, kas un kā, nu, lai labāk sagatavotu šim visam. Manuprāt, tas ir tas solis, kurā virzienā mēs varētu iet.
You would like to add something?
Yes, because I think if we don't do that, then all the institutions, including the armed forces, would have to focus on providing power, providing food, instead of providing the security for you, right? And I think that's, for me, that's a strong argument. And that's at least what I'm also trying, in my case, mostly to persuade my family and my friends. When I receive the question, do we need to do something? Do they really mean, you know, these recommendations? Are there something to be afraid of? And I said, yes, I have taken care of my family, because then they won't take out resources from the community that probably would have more important stuff to do. So I think maybe that's also the way we should look at it.
Okay, if anyone has a question, please, you can already ask our panelists questions. But about the Canadian experience, you mentioned that you are 7,000 kilometers away from this very small land that is in eastern borders of Europe. And how do, I don't know, Canadian society view that you are very important allies in this very far country? Do you have such surveys or sentiment analysis?
I mean, I think we're living in some really volatile and uncertain times, and nothing could be more apparent in Canada over the last few weeks and months. I think the attitude in Canada has been changing for many reasons, and just last week we announced a massive increase to the investment in our defense, as well as our contributions to NATO. So I think even this past week with the G7 conference that occurred in Canada, as well as next week with the NATO conference that's going to be happening in The Hague, there is going to be a lot of changes coming, and I'm not in a good position right now to predict what those are. But I can definitely say this is the first time in my memory that Canada went through an election 2 months ago, and security and defense was a primary issue, and that has never happened in the past. I do want to bounce back quickly onto what was just talked about with respect to resilience training. So again, as I mentioned earlier, I have 2 young boys, 10 and 12, and if I were to turn off the internet, I would know about it in 90 seconds. So, you know, whether it's turning off the internet for an evening a week, or losing power like we did last summer here during a giant storm, we became stronger because we went through that adversary. And I think that would be one of my only insights on how do we prepare for something that is going to be tough, is that you got to practice it. In the military, we talk about rehearsals. And the purpose of doing this is to develop trust. And trust is really a function of that confidence to accept risk. And you can only increase trust through shared experience and communication. And so it is incredibly important when we do fall NAMAS exercises or when we go to the field to do practice or training, that we get out there, that we talk about what we do, we leverage rehearsals, and that we talk about it afterwards so everyone is in a better position to support that event going forward afterwards. Thank you.
You both mentioned the scale that we are competing against, our adversary, namely Russia. I was surprised last week. I heard in a NATO Stratcom conference that in your Canadian elections, Russia had a very huge interest and they interfered. And I was like, wow, 7,000 kilometers over there, and still there's a long hand of Russia. But a lot of compliments you said about our national forces, but maybe there is some particular things that your colleagues from Latvian Army could learn specifically from Danish and Canadian colleagues.
Well, I think actually that Latvia has quite some international experience also. So I would prefer to turn it around and say what we have to be very good at is actually to work together. It's a big challenge to, as in my case, to have a lot of countries that we have to work together, especially when it comes to the ability to communicate and the ability to sustain our forces. But where we all need to learn from each other is how we do that together, also with the Latvian, because you can have a lot of very good national procedures, and actually I think Latvia has, like many of the countries, but the challenge is to have all that working together, acting as one unit. That's a challenge. That's also what we are trying to work at, and that's also coming back to the big exercise like NAMAS and all the other exercises. It's about to getting that big machine working together. If you look at the division with all the troops, if we are fully actuated, I will have between 20 and 25,000 soldiers under my command, right? That's a huge bunch of people. And there is a big responsibility all the way down that we understand and we know how we can work together, that we know each of the countries', strengths and weakness. But if you add that all together, I also think we are very, very strong, because an opponent cannot say, how will they actually react, right? It all depends on whether it's Italian you have in the front or Danes you have in the front. So there is actually a lot of things that our opponent will have to look into to be able to deal with us in that context. But for me, I think the biggest challenge is that we here in Latvia have to figure out, and we are very well on our way, how we get even stronger together.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to my earlier point that I don't think there's anything that Latvia really needs to take away from Canada. I think the reality is every member of NATO brings its own strength. We're kind of like the Avengers in that way. We all have our different advantages, and this is a good thing, because if we were all the same, that we would only present one dilemma to our adversary. And the fact that we have 32 strong countries united together presenting 32 different dilemmas to the adversary is a good thing. I will make one comment about relationships, and I think it's important to be persistent and predictable. And so, if anything, that's my only advice, not because it's not something that Latvia already does, but I think that is the one thing in a relationship that is important, is to not be too unpredictable with respect to what you plan to do, and that is achieved through communication, and we do work together on our plans and our plan development to make sure that in whatever eventuality comes, that we're all working off of the same baseline.
Thank you. And Colonel, maybe you could comment, what have we learned from our allies?
Mēs mācāmies katru dienu. Mēs esam relatīvi jauna valsts, jauna bruņotie spēki. Tāpēc arī mums ir ļoti daudz ko mācīties no mūsu sabiedrotiem. Gan procedūru ziņā, gan ekipējuma, militāra ekipējuma izmantošanas ziņā, gan arī visos citos jautājumos. Līdz ar to tas, ka šeit ir ļoti daudznacionāla sabiedrība šeit Latvijā, mēs ļoti daudz arī paši sevi iegūstam, mācoties, saprotot labākos piemērus, paņemot un integrējot mūsu sistēmā. Līdz ar to tas strādā visos virzienos. Mēs mācāmies viens un otru, paņemam labākos, aizvedam labākās prakses atpakaļ un ieviešam to pie sevīm. Tāpēc, manuprāt, mēs mācāmies viens no otru, un tas ir pastāvīgs darbs.
Please.
Yeah, and I'll just add to this because we also learn from you. If you can imagine that, we have this different kind of units on the ground. Some are here for 6 months, some are here for a year, some of us are here for a longer time. And if we add the knowledge and skills that many NATO countries have, as mentioned by the Colonel, then we add the knowledge you have to your country. We add the knowledge that you have about the terrain, how your society works. And again, if we put that in the same frame, then we are again stronger together. So I will also say that if I didn't have Latvian officers, if I didn't have the close cooperation with the National Guard and the Mechanized Infantry Brigade, I wouldn't know what I know today about how to operate in Latvia. So again, I really think that this requires that if we are good at talking and working together, then I also think that we are much stronger together.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, please. Can we give a microphone? And please present yourself. So it's for the broadcast. We need a microphone.
Dzirdat? Paldies. Tā, esmu vietējais cēsnieks, nesen arī sācis dienas uz zemesardzē. Man jautājums vairāk ir par kara būtību, respektīvi karš Ukrainā ir tāds saucamais conventional warfare, kur ir izmantoti, netiek izmantot atomieroči, un tas mans galvenais jautājums. Daudzām NATO valstīm, arī Krievijai, ir atomieroči. Respektīvi, kādas ir garantijas savstarpējām pusēm, kad sāktos karš šeit Latvijā vai karš pret NATO un Krieviju, ka netiktu izmantot šādi ieroči, lai garantētu savu uzvaru?
Thank you for the question. Well, that was a big one. A lot of politics mixed with military, but please...
Yeah, I think it's important to underline that even though if the panel here was at even higher ranking people than the three of us, we cannot give any guarantees. But I think what we have seen so far is that, and luckily for that the countries that own these kind of weapons are very reluctant in using them. And I think probably that's the best way to go forward. But on the other hand, if you look at it from a strategic point and we look at Russia, that is some of the strategic consideration that is ongoing, that you don't have to push them so hard that the only solution they have back is to use these kind of weapon systems, right? So that's probably a balance, but I think that's what our governmental leaders and the top NATO officers are thinking about. I think here on the ground, unfortunately, I don't think there's so much we can do about it. So I think that would probably be my best personal guess on your very good question.
Hey, thanks for your service. Greatly appreciated. It's through that responsibility that it's your sacrifice that is ensuring our safety and security. So greatly appreciated. We do have to understand that there is a lot of very smart people that get together and draft up things like the Geneva Conventions, and there's international rule of law, and we have a lot of dialogue surrounding that. And the system hasn't broken down. And so back to that confidence to accept risk that I mentioned earlier, it is through that that discussion, shared experience, that we develop that trust and that reliance on the fact that there is a little bit of order and structure out there, so that we don't break down and do something that's really bad. But otherwise, to predict or to give you a guarantee is impossible. We just trust, and that's why we also comply to all these regulations. Because if we were to not follow, whether it's the Geneva Conventions or the International Human Rights Tribunal discussions, then why would our enemy? And so we set the example through our adherence to the rules of the world.
No manas puses tad tāds plašāk nedaudz paņemot NATO un Krievijas kontekstā, tad kodolieroči ir strateģiskās atturēšanas instruments, viens no instrumentiem. Un jāņem vērā, ka mēs, Latvija, kā NATO dalība valsts, esam arī aliansē, kur ir kodolieroči, līdz ar tas balansē ar Krieviju šo spēku attiecību un arī atturēšanu. Līdz ar to, kā jau kolēģi teica, garantēt, ka kāda no pusēm neizmantos kodolieročus, mēs nekad nevaram, bet šis ir primāri atturēšanas un deterrents, kā lai saka, instruments, ko izmanto NATO un arī kodola valstis.
I'm not in a position to answer, but just a quick remark. Yes, basically what you said, that you are one of the most important pieces in this whole system, and deterrence and resilience. By joining National Guard, you set the example, and without young people joining national forces, it all is just blah blah blah. But you mentioned Ukraine. What lessons can we learn from Ukraine?
I think there are a lot of lessons, but again, I think all lessons also have to be put in the right context. So I think that's important for me to say up front. And the biggest difference, if we have to, draw on similarities, is that no one owns the airspace in Ukraine. So I think that's very important when you talk about what can we learn and what can we not learn. I think we earlier already touched upon one major lessons learned. It's the agility and the fastness by which the Ukraine armed forces, together with the local industry, are able to procure and utilize the latest technology. I think probably that's the most important one. The other one that has a big influence on what we are thinking about how we will fight is also the fact that it has become much harder to hide in the battlefield. So I think, except if you are younger than 20 years, all soldiers older than 20 years, have been told, well, you can hide out in the woods, right? If you have the right uniform and you're green and brown in your face and etc. And the fact is right now that it has become much more difficult to hide in the woods or elsewhere, right? So that will change how we operate. It will also change how we command our troops. I have been raised through my whole career by being told that, whether I was a platoon commander or brigade commander or now division commander, you have physically to be present where the fight is going on. If I do that today, I think the statistic from Ukraine will show that I will die within 10 minutes, right? So it's much about a different way also how we command our troops. They need to be able to work much more independently on my intent. They need to understand how I want to do the fight. So I think there are numerous of examples, but I will leave also a couple of examples for my colleagues.
I'm just going to speak personally, what we're learning from Ukraine, and there's a lot of technological and like tactics and procedures and all that kind of stuff. But I think that the one truth that we're taking away from there is that the character of war has not changed over generations. It is still a toil of humans on the battle space, and there's going to be death, and it's going to be bloody. And we're seeing a return to more traditional warfare where where there is going to be parity on the battlefield. What happened in the 90s and in the knots with respect to building a iron mountain of stores and then just being able to project on a lesser opponent is no more, at least not now. And there is a human aspect to warfare that has emerged again. That's what I take away from it.
Colonel?
Kā es teicu, karš mainās ļoti, veids, kādā veidā kara darbība notiekās, mainās ļoti strauji un jāspēj adaptēties, mācīties. Tas ir galvenā lieta, kas, manuprāt, ir jāpaņem līdzi. Un, ko komandieri teica, tad arī, lai industrija tiktu līdzi visu šo spēju ieviešanā. Manā pašā prātā ir, nākošais karš nebūs tāds pats. Lai arī ko mēs iemācītos tagad, nebūs viņš tāds pats. Daudzas lietas, protams, Krievija arī iemācīsies no šī kara Ukrainā, un arī mēs iemācīsimies, bet tiks atrast jauni risinājumi, jaunas piegājieni arī apvidus Latvijā un citur Eiropā ir savādāks nekā Ukrainā. Līdz ar to nākamais karš būs savādāks nekā tagad Ukrainā. Skaidrs, ka mums jāpaņem viss labākais, bet, manuprāt, galvenais ir spēja ātri mācīties, ieviest jaunas tehnoloģijas, sadarbība ar industriju, un visas sabiedrības iesaist, kas arī ir Ukrainā parādījis, ka tas ir absolūti nepieciešamība, lai veiksmīgi cīnītos.
Please, if you have something to add.
Yes, I was just thinking about, based on the answer, that one thing we have also learned is, unfortunately, one could say, is that Russia are willing to use whatever kind of power they have, and they don't care about human lives. Some will say it's no news, but I think it's important for us to understand, coming back to my own country, and maybe where I feel sometimes they are maybe a little bit too naive.
A few times you mentioned the cooperation between the military, society, and industry. Maybe you can somehow comment at what stage are we now within collaboration with industry.
From the NATO perspective, the way we are dealing with it right now is that a lot is going on, but it's to the different national chains of commands. For example, the command and control system we use in the division, that's provided by a Danish company, and that company was taking part in Night Namas last year. And they actually went out to visit the National Guard brigades and saw how they use the systems, right? I have seen the same for some of the systems that Canadian have brought in, and I think the same is for Latvian. So right now it's not a NATO, you can say, cooperation with industry. It goes through the different nations that participate, but the companies are very willing. They, of course, also see an opportunity not only to support, but also to earn money. So let's be frank here. So I think it's probably more us who needs to figure out how we can be more open to invite them in, because I still think we have a tendency to be a little bit reluctant on that.
And why I'm asking this, because in Latvia we have a huge debate about the drones, and that the drone is that silver bullet, the miracle that if you own, I don't know, the drone wall, it will all fade away. So maybe Connell, you can comment how are we doing with the private industry and drone producers?
Kā jūs minējāt, es oponētu, ka droni ir sudraba lode, ar kuru visu tagad atrisināsim. Mums, manā izpratnē tā nav, un mums jāpieturās arī pie tradicionālam. Skaidrs, ka sadarbība ar industriju pēdējos gados ir būtiski attīstījusies un aizgājusi priekšu, manuprāt, ļoti cieša sadarbība, un arī veids, kā mēs atbalstam Ukrainu, arī veicina šīs industrijas un bruņoto spēku sadarbību. Ir palikuši ļoti ciešākas tādas saites ar industriju, bet ir vēl arī lietas, kur attīstīties. Ir jāiet un vairāk zinātnieki jāpiesaist šai tīri mācību iestādes, es domāju, universitātes un vispārējos, kas ir šo zināšanu avots, ir jāiesaist šī pasākumā arī, un tad beigās jāatrod tas veids, kādā veidā pareizi to noformulēties, jo Mēs varam ieiet otrā galībā, kad bruņoties spēki sāk strādāt priekš industrijas, un to mēs negribam panākt. Jo tad industrija ražo un visu laiku mums jātestē, un mums nav laika darīt savas lietas un trenēties un mācīties un gatavoties. Līdz ar to ļoti laba sadarbība, jāatrod tas pareizais balans, kādā veidā šo sadarbību virzīt tālāk. Zinātnē jāienāk vairāk, lai mēs būtu inovatīvāki un nāktu ar jaunām tehnoloģijām skaidrs. Manuprāt, šobrīd sadarbība ir ļoti laba, un tā var tikai attīstīties tālāk. Ir plāni Aizsardzības ministrijai, kā to turpmāk uzlabot arī.
Well, this particular festival is, I see your hands, we have 2 questions. Perfect. Please give the microphone, but a short remark. This festival is very good because to work with science and industry, because on your left you have Riga Stradiņš University, over there you have Riga Technical University. You can invite them here and discuss it openly. We are ready for your questions, please.
Thank you. My name is Sandra. I'm ordinary civilian at the moment, at least. My question is more like both political, military, and societal. So, 3-way question. So, in a way, in Latvia we have society that is a bit divided by language, culture, and different experiences during the Soviet times and not that long times ago. So, how do you see this winning over hearts and minds of people in situation where you need to be sure that the local population won't shoot you in the back?
Thank you very much. This is the 2 keywords, winning hearts and minds, please.
Yeah, we actually had the pleasure of having a visit from a woman called Evita the other day in the headquarters to also try to educate at least me and my staff more about this. I think we should not be naive. There are probably a part here in Latvia that some part of the Russian-speaking population that we will not be able to persuade. I think we have to be realistic about that, and then I think we have to use our effort to say how can we manage that. It's still my perception that the majority of the Latvian here actually that we don't need to win their heart and minds. I probably have more to prove that I'm here and willing and capable to do whatever I can to support and defend you. So I think my short question will be the numbers that are Russian speaking. I will not use so much effort on trying to persuade them, more to make sure that they don't interfere in what I'm supposed to do.
How to win hearts and minds?
So this is a really good question, and thank you. I think in any democracy, nobody has 100% of the vote. And I think that there are a lot of things that we share across a country. So my country also just went through an election, and there are always issues that are going to be polarizing. But when it comes to the security and the sovereignty of our nation, which I think is the number one responsibility of government, that we need to look at where our shared values are, and it is really that, and focus on the less contentious issues first, and then build on that through the establishment of trust. Nobody's perfect, and you can find fault in anyone, and it's really just trying to appease by most for the best of society and a democracy.
Thank you, Colonel.
Paskatoties uz Ukrainu, mēs redzam, protams, ka ir tā daļa, kas dzīvo Krievijas informācijas telpā un ar to arī atbalsta. Tas, ko skolā mums ir mācīts, un primāri tas attiecās uz starptautiskajām operācijām, ka ir 2 ekstrēmās daļas. Viena ekstrēma pozitīvi atbalstoša mūsu idejām. Otra daļa ir otrs ekstrīms, kas ir neatbalstoši un kas pretojās mūsu idejām. Te es teiktu, tad ir tie, kas mums būtu jāpārliecina. Un tad ir tā daļa vidū, kas svārstās, un tā ir tā galvenā daļa, ar kur mums ir jāstrādā, jāpārliecina. Manuprāt, mēs varam pārliecināt, ja stāstot mūsu stāstu, izglītojot, rādot, ko mēs darām un kas mēs esam. Un tā mēs arī varam šo, teiksim tā, plaisu atrisināt, teiksim tā. Es ceru, ka es atbildēju.
Well, there's not an easy answer, and that's a generational thing, and I think it's a long-term game. And we had another question there.
Hi. First of all, many thanks for all the speakers. You already touched the topic of the military personnel, and which is one of the key components of Europe's overall readiness to defend itself. So my question is, as a result of the military personnel shortage, several countries are bringing back the conscription, and what could be done to increase the military personnel across Europe without making military service mandatory? Thank you.
Also a good question.
Yeah. I don't think I have the answer because I'm actually a spokesperson for having conscription. I think if we are talking about security, in my mind, and of course I'm also wearing a uniform, I cannot see a more important purpose than being educated and trained for defending your own country. I think it's about learning to take responsibility, and I think if we develop the right conscriptions, we have had that in Denmark without interrupting it for many, many years, and we actually seen a high number of also female joining, and they are very positive. So I think for me, it's about taking a responsibility for more than yourself and contribute to your own country's security. The basic challenge is to make that attractive, to make sure that we treat our young people well, and they actually leave the armed forces more educated and better trained. But for me, that also contributes to the country's resilience. So I'm not able to answer your question because I'm actually very pro-conscription. So sorry for that.
I really like your question. So I come from a country where we do not have a federal minister of education. So in a country as large as Canada geographically, depending on where you live in the country, you get regional education, and that includes history. And so how better to build positive and proud people than through speaking of our accolades and our history. And I think that if you were to look at education and the education of your children, there are ways of building that pride in your nation without actually having to enroll in basic training and do that. So this is a personal soapbox for me that I think we need a federal minister of education in Canada, and we need to mandate military history as part of our education for our youth. Because I think we could learn from our European allies who have very strong and powerful histories, and I think you should be proud of that. And I think by focusing on your achievements as a nation, you could potentially have other ways of meeting the same goals of conscription. Now, I mean, my understanding of the conscription here in Latvia, I think it gives multiple opportunities for youth to participate in public service, whether it is in uniform or working for the government. And I think that's an exceptional opportunity for anyone. And it's not for lifetime; it's for periods of time at a time. So it's not like you have no choice. Your choice is to whether to serve or not in some capacity. And I admire that, and I learn a lot every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Es savā atbildē varbūt nedaudz pieešu no cita virziena. Somijā un Norvēģijā ir goda lieta dienēt obligāto dienestu. Un tur cilvēki apvainojās, ja viņi nepaņem. Tā ir goda lieta. Cilvēki, tā ir sabiedrības attieksme pret savu valsti, vēlme viņu aizsargāt. Un, manuprāt, tas arī tas galvenais. Skaidrs, ka mūsu kā bruņoto spēku vēlme ir, lai visi obligātā dienesta karavīri būtu brīvprātīgie, tā kā tas bija pirmajos iesaukumos. Diemžēl mēs vēl līdz tam neesam izauguši. Mums ir jāturpina augt. Ir pietiekuši laba bonusu sistēma, kas šo atbalsta. Manuprāt, mums tikai jāiet uz priekšu, un ar laiku, tad, kad mēs pierādīsim, ka mēs spējam obligāto dienestu, šo valsts aizsardzības dienestu Latvijas gadījumā pietiekoši kvalitatīvi noorganizēt, lai tie jaunieši, kas pabeidz viņu arī darba tirgu otra pusi, jeb tie uzņēmēji, kas viņus pēc tam pieņems darbā, redzēt, ka tur ir kvalitāte iekšā, gan disciplīna, gan spēja vadīt, gan visu pārējo, ko militārā dienestā to var iegūt, tad arī šis prestižs un brīvprātības princips, manuprāt, vairāk aizies Latvijā. Es ceru, ka es atbildēju uz jautājumu, varbūt no nedaudz citas puses, bet, manuprāt, caur laiku izglītojot un pierādot, ka tas nav Krievijas padomju savienības obligātā dienesta standarts, ko mēs mēģinam ieviest, tas arī veicinās šo sapratni un vēlmi piedalīties valsts aizsardzībā.
Just a quick remark. When Commander Smits replied to your question by saying thank you for your service, I think this is very telling thing about the reputation of Army, especially in North America. When you hear someone who has served in Army, instantly you will hear a reply, thank you for your service. And I think that is the point we should aim in also in Latvia. Whenever you hear somebody from National Guard or for regular forces, you say thank you for your service. And as we are approaching our final 5 minutes, yes, some last questions are welcome.
Yeah, my name is Mārtiņš, and I have a question about joint military equipment procurement for the Baltic states. Why are we not seeing like more joint purchases of basically gear? Like I read recently, the Latvia is considering purchasing archers, SPAs for the army. But meanwhile, Lithuania and Estonia are doing something similar, but different models, like separate contracts. Why are we not seeing joint procurement? And if we did joint procurement, what would be the actual benefits from that? Would that be beneficial, if at all? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, that was a particular in-depth question.
Yeah, I can take it from the NATO point, and I think you should have the opportunity in the end. NATO have standards. So the idea about buying the same kind of equipment to the same kind of standard is actually very important, because else I would not be able to have the different countries to fight in one unit. But I think it comes back to money. It comes back to, in many cases, that each country are protecting or supporting their own industry, and that's probably why we sometimes end up with other solutions. Another explanation can also be money. How many money do you have available? But I think your point is very valid. It would be awesome good if we had all the same kind of equipment, but I think there are several explanations why that's not the case.
I'll give you some of those explanations. So Canada has a policy that for every dollar it spends abroad, there must be an investment in Canada. So an offset is what we call it for procurement. And of those dollars that are spent in Canada, 20% of them have to be spent in the province of Quebec, and 5% of them have to be spent on our indigenous populations. And so we have regulations like that are not compatible for joint procurement. And we're working on that to make it better and to be more transparent with our partners. But it is bureaucracy, like what I just gave you as an example, that slows us down.
Tad no manas puses neesmu nodrošinājums speciālists, bet iedošu perspektīvu arī nedaudz šī. Nav tā, ka Baltijas valsts kopā neko neiegādājas. Ir vairākas iegādes programmas, kas strādā nodrošinājuma jomā, piemēram, transporta līdzekļi kopēji tiek pirkti Baltijas valstīs. Skaidrs, ka tas dod labākus līguma nosacījumus, jo apjomi ir lielāki un var labākas cenas sarunāt. Bet ir tieši šis, ko iepriekšējie runātāji pieminēja arī mūsu valsts gadījumā, ir 30% ir jāatstāj vietējā industrijā. Tas ir, protams, faktors, kas jāņem vērā šo kopējos iepirkumus analizējot. Un ne visi uzņēmumi ir gatavi to darīt. Tāpēc arī rodās šīs atšķirības starp valstīm.
Thank you. Just a quick question there. As we have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Azada and I'm from the Embassy of Sweden. Happy to hear that the Latvian purchase of Archer has been noticed. And I'm very certain that there's much more we can do together. I have one quick question, and that is if you would give one advice to the politicians in your own home, in your respective countries, what would that be?
Thank you very much.
That's actually a hard one. I think it's to support soldiers, veterans, and families more. At least seen from my national perspectives, we don't have the same tradition to do that, and I think it's very important to keep up the population support for joining the armed forces, whether you're a civilian or not. And for me, it's very close to my heart that we take care of our soldiers also after they have been in service.
Commander Smith.
Yeah, that's a tough question right now, and I think I'm encouraged by some of the changes that have been happening over the last 2 weeks and over the next week. So again, because there's announcements that are being made right now by the Canadian government, I'd be hesitant to answer that anymore, other than to say I encourage the focus on defense and security of Canadian people.
Polkovičs kungs.
Ieklausīties militārajā padomā.
That was a good one. And to conclude our conversation, maybe some quick remarks on our topic. How are we doing in terms of readiness to defend Europe?
I think we're doing good, and I will take it here to Latvia, and I will say it's not just something I say because I'm sitting up here, because else I wouldn't just not comment it. I think we have a very good cooperation with the Latvian Armed Forces. And I think that's vital for us being together, able to defend Latvia. And I can assure you that I will do whatever is in my power to keep that relationship up, and we will be ready to fight together with you. I don't hope it will be necessary, but we will do our best. And I know I speak on behalf of all the countries that contribute to NATO here in Latvia. So thank you for being so kind and nice to us, and we are very proud of being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Latvia is a wonderful host, and I'm very happy to be here. The world needs more Latvia, and we saw that with the recognition of Latvia on the Security Council just last week, so that's fantastic. And I hope that more people come and visit this wonderful country and get to have the same experiences that I've had over the last little bit. We are stronger together. That is the quote to walk away from this with, and all nations working together are encouraging.
Thank you.
Tad paldies mūsu sabiedrotiem par būšanu Latvijā un mūsu atbalstu. Noteikti mēs, kā uzņemošā valsts, darīsim visu, lai jūs pēc iespējas labāk šeit justos. Un, protams, mūsu vēlme ir, lai vairāk sabiedrotie ir Latvijā. Līdz ar to mēs kopā būsim drošāki, bet tas pavelk līdz arī mūsu savus mājas darbus, jaunu poligonu veidošana un citu, lai principā sabiedrotie šeit varētu kļūt arī labāki. Viņu karavīri varētu trenēties un aizbraukt no šejienes labāk nekā viņi atbrauc.
Thank you. And with that, please give a big round of applause to our distinguished panel. And please take away this beautiful quote: "The world needs more Latvia." Thank you very much.